It is Country Viewpoint here on Flow FM, and our next guest is in Parliament at the moment in Melbourne, joining us on the line to go through a discussion about regional events. We're going to talk now to the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party, the member for Eildon, and also the Shadow Minister for Tourism, Major Events and Sport, Sydney McLeish, who joins us on the line. Sydney, welcome back to Country Viewpoint.
Oh, great to be back. Great to be back. Thank you for having me.
I wish we were having you back under better circumstances, but we've got a few negatives to talk about at the moment, unfortunately. The lockdown, I think we're, what are we now, day 12 of what was supposed to be a 7-day lockdown, is that right?
Well, that's right. And if you actually believe it was even a 14-day lockdown, because immediately we were told that there will be no visitation to country Victoria on the long weekend. So you need to add the extra 4 days. So we had 7 plus 7, but really it was 7 plus 11.
Gee whiz. So your electorate is going to be hit especially hard by that, bearing in mind that the Yarra Valley, Yarra Ranges, great place to visit through long weekends. Plenty of Melburnians head up the highway and get in there normally. They won't be this year.
They certainly won't be this year. And the Yarra Valley actually are up in arms because they are classified as metropolitan Melbourne, whereas the other end of my electorate is country Victoria. So I'm always kind of straddling the two, but everybody is very hot under the collar about being metro Melbourne when people live on farms and you can go for a walk for 10 kilometres and not see another person. We've got a bit of both in the Yarra Valley. We've got some heavily populated areas, but we've got lots of big open areas too.
You also have a fantastic number of regional events, as do all regions in Victoria. They've been hit especially hard over the last 12 to 18 months since COVID took off. And there's certainly no disrespect to anyone involved in government or parliament. I mean, COVID is what it is, but the situation with regional events where there was some money promised by the government, I think it was $8 million allocated for the Regional Events Fund. Now, this money is due to be spent by June 30th, and my understanding is the fund hasn't even been opened yet.
Correct. Absolutely. So, amid a bit of fanfare with last year's budget, which was not handed down in May, it was handed down in November. So they announced, the money for the Regional Events Fund, and for the current financial year, they announced $8 million. They announced $4 million for the next year and the year after that, so they're looking at halving it. But everybody involved in regional events said, what's happening about that? Where's that money? It hasn't opened. The website clearly says, we'll be updated information about this later. So no one knows, and those in the industry, are asking, fairly enough, what is going on?
It's a bizarre situation because if any area needs help, it is regional events. I mean, not just specific to this particular lockdown, but I mean the lockdown that we had, lockdown 2 and lockdown 3 in February this year, they really bit at regional events. Those times of year are so synonymous with regional events. I mean, this time of year, it's not so bad, but I mean, you look at February's calendar of regional events, it is jam-packed every year.
Absolutely. We had some great events. The Bells Beach Carnival at Easter went. The Cadell Evans Road Race went. Bendigo had this amazingly successful Lost Trades Fair. It went. Even in Melbourne, the International Flower and Garden Show, it went because they didn't have certainty. And one thing that is really well known is that Melbourne drives regional Victoria events. So if you close down or lock off Melbourne, people within the regions, they travel a little bit around the regions, but they don't travel to the extent to really make a big successful event. So, we're having from the long weekend, all sorts of events are having to be postponed. Events that can attract anywhere from 4,000 to 18,000 across Victoria are now looking to be cancelled, including sporting events. There was Ballarat were to have a basketball. It was.
Yep.
Athletics got the flick earlier in the year. The Little Aths got the flick earlier in the year from Ballarat. Basketball tournament, 7,000 visitors it brings to Ballarat.
Unbelievable.
Cancelled. Yeah, it's a lot. Geelong have junior soccer tournament. It brings 3,000 spectators with 1,000 players. It's a huge boost to Geelong. It's gone as well. So this is even kids' sports. This isn't our festivals and carnivals and big events that really drive, 18,000, 20,000 people. These are lots of the 5,000 people that really make a great event. Wineries, the tours up around we have some great areas in the Yarra Valley and the King Valley and around Heathcote.
You most certainly do. I can attest to that.
Yeah, no, we've got some great areas. And even out in the west too, there's so many vineyards and things. And they collectively get together to market themselves and to create a great weekend for people coming to visit because, this helps drive local economies. It puts people in beds, hotel beds and at the tables in restaurants. And then in the little shop, when you're going down the street, you look in the little shops and you often buy things in all of these places and the cafes. So it all flows on. It's really important because and it's the big actual weekends that help the quieter times. You might be dead midweek, but knowing that you've got a big weekend or a long weekend really, really helps.
As strange as this might seem, the government inaction on this might actually turn out to be a good thing because I imagine if the $8 million had been spent, we've gone through 2 extra lockdowns and had been expected for, I think you could argue the point whether or not they were warranted. I guess if we can spend that money now and actually get ready in the future for events on the other side of the immunisation program being rolled out, we might actually be better off.
Well, look, I wonder about that. They certainly had a good opportunity for the first 4 months of this year to really start boosting. And what we saw was a whole lot of events got cancelled because of the uncertainty. And it would have been good to help provide a backstop for the events if they got cancelled and you're out of pocket because people are reluctant to put their hand in the pocket to pay insurance or a liquor licence, all of these sorts of things, temporary fencing, they've got to put deposits down if events get cancelled and they do their dough. So they don't want to lose their money. So they cancel or postpone the events instead. So, maybe that the government have used some of this for the vouchers that they've announced. We don't know. And we'll have an opportunity to quiz the minister later this month. So we'll certainly be asking some of those questions about, you didn't spend that $8 million. Where is it? Have you spent any of it? Have you used it for vouchers or are you going to just top up the next calendar year because regional events need our support?
They do. Cindy, will you be calling for the government to make sure that this $8 million that hasn't been spent so far is actually spent on regional events?
Certainly will be, because that is so important that happens.
All right. So the bells are going, so you'll be required in the chamber. But
they've just finished cleaning. We're in the deep clean for half an hour, so we've just done that. They empty out the chamber. It's a COVID procedure, so they empty out the chamber and then they'll have the bells until we come back.
Fantastic.
Until there's enough people in the chamber. Shouldn't be long because we're only allowed a few people in the chamber.
Yes, of course. COVID rules are what they are. But you touched on sporting events before, and I just wanted to finish on that. Regional sport in particular. I mean, it's been dudded by this lockdown. We've seen now regional sport called off for 2 weeks in succession in regional Victoria, which is horrible. It may even go on beyond that, depending on what comes of the new raft of restrictions later this week, whether or not the lockdown gets lifted or certain parts of it remain. As you know, there are lots of people from metropolitan Melbourne who go out and play their sport in country Victoria and certainly in big pockets of our flow network. And it looks as though, even though junior sport is being able to get back and get playing, it's just simply not viable for country associations and leagues, football and netball and hockey and whatever sport it may be, to actually get back to playing the game while they can't have any crowds.
And it makes it really difficult because someone's got to get the kids, and if you've driven a decent way, and people, parents can drive an hour to get to a hockey event or a football event if their kids are trying to, play that level higher. And then what are they supposed to sit in the car and wait for you to finish? And we've got some areas where, the competition is over the metropolitan and the regional divide as well. And half the kids in the team couldn't play, so they've ended up calling them off. But one of the ones that is absolutely astounding is they've got the 50-person limit. But this 50-person limit is on a 40-hectare property as well, like a golf course. So it's not like a football field or outdoor sporting facility. This is a golf course, and it makes it really difficult for, when they've got restrictions on golf. And I know that Golf Victoria or Golf Australia have gone into bat to say, look, this doesn't make any sense, when you've got people spread all over golf courses, and they've given some feeble excuse. So, or they might congregate around their car. It's like, everyone will be putting their own clubs in their own car. You'll all be 1.5 meters away from each other and, you pretty well go away. So I'll certainly be calling for some common sense approach here. And, we need to have families back, even if it is one parent, supporting their kids. But we've got to get the kids back out on the field, regardless of what sport.
Are you disappointed that we're 15, 18 months in now to this pandemic in Australia really biting, and we still haven't been able to have, as you term there, common sense approaches to some of this stuff? I mean, when the lockdown was announced in Melbourne recently, and my understanding is there was a national baseball competition being played in Sunraysia. People from all over the country were playing baseball and softball, I think it was, in Sunraysia at the time, 500-600 kilometres away from where the outbreak situations were. They had to disperse immediately within 24 hours. People's travel plans had to change to be able to get home across state borders. I mean, the lack of common sense
outrageous.
It really is, isn't it?
It is totally outrageous because, there was a couple of exposure sites in central Victoria, but they became certainly somebody had driven through them pretty well, and someone I think had gone to the footy club. But, east and west of that, it was nowhere, has been nowhere. Some shires have never had a case, and so you've got places like Warrnambool, Horsham, Mildura, Ballarat, miles and miles from any exposure sites or any cases, and they've all had to close down, and it just makes no sense. At least we got the kids back to school in country Victoria. That was one thing, because they just should not. I mean, they should have even gone off for that week.
No.
Anyway.
Well, I'll let you get back to the chamber, but thank you very much for telling us about that. And
No problem.
Good luck fighting the fight on that $8 million. Let's hope we get that reinstated, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
No worries. Thanks.